George Washington was born February 22nd, 1932, and died December 14th, 1799, at the age of 67. George Washington was the first President of the United States from 1789 to 1797. George Washington was a dominant military and political leader of the U.S. from 1775 to 1799. Washington led the U.S. to victory over Great Britain in the American Revolutionary War. Washington was Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army from 1775 to 1783. Washington presided over the writing of the Constitution in 1787. George Washington was the first president by unanimous choice. Washington helped build a strong, well-financed national government that was accepted by all Americans. Washington had great leadership skills and was looked up to by his soldiers. In battle, he made very smart decisions. George Washington exemplified courage all throughout his life, and because of his courageous spirit, he was a great military leader. George Washington was courageous enough to cross a freezing Delaware River in the dead of winter and defeated the British in 2 battles, retook New Jersey, and put the momentum back on the side of the Americans. This shows great courage and leadership to do this. This is why Washington is remembered as one of our nation's great leaders and will be remembered throughout history for many years to come. Huckleberry Finn is a fictional character created by Mark Twain. Huck Finn first appeared in the book The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Huck Finn is the protagonist in Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Huck Finn is said to be around 13 or 14 and to be a very mischievous boy. Huck Finn basically has zero education and has a laid-back childhood of doing little work and smoking tobacco. Huck was adopted by a widow who tries to correct Huck's behavior. Huckleberry Finn's dad is known as the town's drunk, and Huck hasn't seen his dad in a very long time. Huck's appearance is described basically as baggy, worn-down clothes. Huck's best friend is Tom Sawyer. Huck also escapes to an island later in the book where he finds Jim, an African-American slave, and becomes friends with him. Although from the generation of the prejudiced South, Huck does discover to do the right thing. The best example of him doing the right thing is when he helps Jim escape from slavery. Huck shows his courage in countless ways. One of the biggest examples of Huck's courage is by befriending Jim, who is an African-American slave. In those times, and down south especially, most white people were very racist towards African Americans. It takes a great deal of courage to befriend an African American, but Huck was courageous enough to do this. Not only did he befriend him, but Huck also helped Jim escape from slavery, which is something that wouldn't be allowed at all or tolerated in that era, which shows Huck's courageous spirit. Not a lot of people would help someone escape from slavery if they really didn't have to. It was very risky, and Huck was courageous enough to do this. Malcolm X's real name is Malcolm Little. He was born May 19th, 1925, and died February 21st, 1965, at the age of 39. Malcolm X was born in Omaha, Nebraska. He was an African-American Muslim minister, a human rights activist, and Malcolm X was also a very courageous advocate for the rights of African Americans. Malcolm X's father was supposedly killed by the white supremacists, and Malcolm's mother was placed in a mental hospital when he was 13, and he was put in many different foster homes. At age 20, Malcolm went to prison for breaking and entering. In prison, Malcolm joined the Nation of Islam, and when he got out of jail, he rose to be one of their leaders. While in prison, Malcolm earned the nickname Satan for his hostility toward religion. When released from prison, he had a new religion and now a new name, Malcolm X. The Muslim's X symbolizes a true African family name. He could never know. For several years, Malcolm X preached for black rights and to be aggressive against whites. This was completely opposite of Dr. King's belief. Elijah Muhammad, leader of the Nation of Islam, led Malcolm to leave the organization in 1964, and less than a year later, Malcolm X was assassinated by 3 of the members of the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X's courage was demonstrated through his beliefs and is why he is remembered. It takes a lot of courage for an African American to preach against whites and to be so aggressive about it. This is why he is one of the more famous black political leaders throughout history and will be remembered. Chris McCandless was born February 12, 1968, and died in August 1992. He died at the age of 24. McCandless was born in El Segundo, California. On June 2, 1986, Chris McCandless graduated from Wilbert Tucker Woodson High School in Fairfax, Virginia. McCandless attended Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. In May 1990, McCandless donated all of his savings, $25,000, to the Oxfam International Charity, which was a charity for hunger. McCandless then headed into the Alaskan wild. Towards the end of June, McCandless changed his name to Alex and later adopted the last name Supertramp. On his Alaskan odyssey, McCandless kept a journal. McCandless's journal covered a total of 112 days. McCandless carried with him a 10-pound bag of rice, a Remington semi-automatic rifle with 400 rounds of ammunition, a book on plant life, and as well as several other books and basic camping equipment. McCandless assumed that he would be able to forage for plant food and hunt game. McCandless did manage to kill a moose, however, the meat spoiled due to not being properly preserved. McCandless demonstrated a lot of courage in his life. Even though criticized by few for lacking common sense, McCandless did have the courage to go into the wild and donate all of his money to charity and give up all of his possessions to live off of the land. Not a lot of people would give up their money and possessions and live in the wilderness. In fact, most people wouldn't want to chase their dream if it meant giving up their money and possessions. It's unbelievable courage, and it's what Chris McCandless did to live out his dream.